He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Welcome to No Stupid Questions with Susan Edmunds, the money podcast that aims to get you answers to all your money questions. We aren't offering personalised financial advice, but we are here to demystify the world of money and get you clarity on anything you've been wondering about but weren't sure who to ask. I'm joined today by Justin Gregory.
Hi everyone, how you doing?
Thanks to everyone who's sent in questions. If we haven't got to yours yet, it might still be in the works.
And to start this week, we have a question from someone who wanted to be anonymous. They're using the initial A, and as we go on, you'll discover why. Bit of a touchy subject, this one. Okay, this person, A, says, my husband is 10 years older than I am. We are fortunate to both have individual KiwiSaver accounts with healthy balances. My question is, if my husband requires residential care, and if we do not qualify for any state rebates or assistance, and if I am also over 65 years, does my KiwiSaver count as relationship property and therefore have to be used to fund his care, or vice versa, of course? I don't think it's fair if either of us are left with very little KiwiSaver in retirement, as we have both saved for retirement since KiwiSaver was introduced. My supplementary question is, if that understanding is correct, i.e. funds held in my KiwiSaver account must be used to fund my husband's care, or vice versa, how can we ensure that neither of us is left in the financial lurch? Yeah, tricky one.
Yes, an interesting question, and it is one that has come my way before. The basic answer is that yes, if you have enough in your KiwiSaver account, you may have to spend it on your partner's care. When someone needs rest home care, they have to meet an asset test to get the subsidy from the government to pay for it. It's only available to people who have less than $291,825 in combined assets with their partner, or $159,810 if you don't include the family home and car, maybe because your partner's still living in it, for example, not the car, the house. So if your partner goes into care, you'd have to run down all your assets except your house and car until you only had that just under $160,000 left before they could get a subsidy. In terms of what you can do, there really isn't anything that I've found. I checked with Liz Coe, who is founder of Enrich Retirement, and she says there's nothing that can be done. It doesn't matter if you've got a contracting out agreement or anything like that. If you're still together, then it's all in that collective pot. It used to be that people set up trusts to avoid this sort of thing, but that's much harder to do now, and you need to have another reasonable reason for having the trust, not just avoiding being assessed for the subsidy.
I mean, on the one hand, it seems kind of grim to be saying, look, I don't want to be responsible for my partner's care. But on the other hand, it's really understandable that someone who's saved for their retirement for a long time, they don't want to see that run down when potentially they could have a lot longer left to pay for.
Yes, I was looking at this a little while ago when I wrote about age gap relationships, and someone said tongue-in-cheek to me that you'd want to be the older person in that scenario because it can be expensive to have an older partner, particularly when they get that much older.
On that note, let's talk about tax, shall we? Or more specifically, capital gains tax, sometimes abbreviated down to CGT, to be precise, because it's in the news.
Yes, it feels like the tax issue that never goes away, but it's been brought back again this week by a leak to our colleague that revealed that Labor's planning a capital gains tax policy heading into the next election. It's agreed to campaign on a CGT just on property, excluding the family home and farms. We already have the Bright Line test, which applies tax on capital gains for investment properties that are bought and sold within a set period. That was extended to 10 years by the Labor government and then brought back to 2 by this one. We also already have the ability to tax a property that has clearly been bought for the sole purpose of making gain. But then this just takes it a step further.
So what are the arguments in favour of this tax?
Well, there is an argument that there's generally inequity in the way we treat different types of income at the moment, because basically all income from work is taxed, but income from other assets is often not. And it tends to be people who are better off who have the assets to make those capital gains. So there's potentially unfairness there. So what Labor is proposing is pretty much in line with the minority view of the tax working group, which argued that the more limited approach would end up basically pulling in more tax compared to the amount of money and complexity it would cost to administer a more comprehensive capital gains tax.
So for the average ordinary person, what is this potential tax going to mean?
I talked to tax expert Robin Walker at Deloitte about this.
Well, essentially, if you own more than one property, if you're looking at residential property, then if you sell that second property, then there'll be tax to pay on the gain. And so obviously, first of all, you need to have made a gain. So the key thing is that people would need to have records of, first of all, what the value of the property was on 1 July 2027, which is the start date. The details of the policy indicate that it is essentially a gains made from this date, so it's not properties purchased after that date. All existing properties will fall into the regime. So everybody will need to know what's their property worth at that date. And you'll have capital values and rateable values and that sort of thing, but people might want to get their own valuations done of what the property is actually worth at or around that time, because that's going to set what your sort of essentially your cost price is of what you deduct from your sale price to work out what the profit is. And then it will just be a matter of people will need to keep records, right? So if you've got a rental property, then you should be keeping all your records of what all your costs are in any event, because it's part of running your business. But if you've just got like a second holiday home, or you work between different places, and so you've got two properties, how much did you spend renovating the bathroom, or what were the costs that you put into the property in order to be able to deduct those when you're working out what your gain is at the end.
I also saw some property investors online suggesting it could mean that price growth is limited in future. So I asked property data guru Kelvin Davidson at Cotality, which used to be CoreLogic, what he thought.
Lots of other countries have capital gains tax on residential property. You look at, Australia does, the US, Canada, UK, or almost everybody really. And it doesn't necessarily stop house prices rising. We don't know the counterfactual. They may have risen faster if there hadn't been a capital gains tax in those countries, but it doesn't kill capital gains. From an investment perspective, it reduces your return, but probably still be capital gains even with a CGT in place. So, but you would think at the margins it probably does slow down the rate of capital gains. It probably does slow down the rate of house price growth, I should say.
Generally, everyone I've spoken to has said that CGT idea is much more workable than Labor's previous wealth tax proposal. With the CGT, you're only paying tax on the gain once you make it, not potentially being taxed for wealth that might still be held in assets that you can't actually access. It's also worth noting at the moment the Bright Line test means that capital gains are taxed at a person's marginal tax rate, and that can be 39% depending on your normal income and how much of a gain you make. And this policy is talking about a rate of 28%.
Okay, but what are the arguments against a capital gains tax?
I think in general people are a bit wary about any new taxes. I think it's probably a good thing that Labor here has said that they're going to ring fence it for a particular thing, because in general we don't like to be told that we're going to pay more tax and we don't really know where it's going. And I think the other argument that we often hear is that it can be really difficult to administer, and especially when you've got some things captured and some things not. You could spend a lot of time trying to work out, is this one in, is this one out? So the simpler the better, I think, with these things.
We've got another question. This will probably cross most people's minds at one time or another. It's certainly crossed mine. So Kinyash wants to know, and I want to know, and everyone else wants to know, is it possible to win Lotto? And how do you predict what numbers are going to win?
I have a crystal ball on my desk, but it hasn't functioned correctly yet for this purpose. It is possible to win Lotto, but there are some depressing statistics. Your odds of winning First Division are 1 in 383,000. And so with a $7 ticket, that's the same as picking one correct star in the night sky sometime over the next 84 nights, apparently. Apparently, there are 4,548 stars visible in the sky in the Southern Hemisphere. And similarly, your odds of winning Lotto Powerball with a $15 power dip ticket are 1 in 3.8 million. So that's the same as choosing that same right star from all the visible stars for the next 843 nights. And Lotto itself says buying online has the same odds as buying in a shop. My friend once told me that she always buys a ticket when she goes through a random small town because it seems like they're the places that win, but that's clearly not true. All shops have the same odds. Picking your own numbers or buying a dip has the same odds. You can't predict which numbers will come up in any draw-based game, and therefore any strategies or techniques are completely redundant. So there you go. Instant Kiwi games can have different odds, but the outcome is decided when you buy them. So even if you're playing online and trying to come up with the right strategy, doesn't matter, won't affect your chances of winning. And when a prize has to be won, things are a bit better because you could end up with more of a generous second division or third division, but the actual odds themselves don't change.
So the answer to this is no.
No, there's pretty much no way to give yourself a better chance of winning Lotto. Someone else asked recently whether it's better to buy 52 tickets in one draw or one a week for a year, and even then it was basically the same. You're better to take the money you'd put into Lotto and invest it. Even chuck it into a company with a low share price and growth ambitions on Sharesies. That's not personalised financial advice, but my opinion is that basically any investment you make is likely to be better than Lotto, honestly. But of course I say that hoping that the ticket I buy this week will prove me wrong.
Last week, we asked you, and we're using the modern sense of the word here, who was the first billionaire? And the answer is?
Well, there are a few contenders, but we've got John Rockefeller in the US and John Ellerman in the UK. So good to be a John in this scenario.
Never heard of John Ellerman before. All right. Now, this week, we've got an interesting one. Is it more expensive to live now than it was in the 1980s?
I often wonder about this because in the mid-80s when I was born, it was a lot more common not to need two incomes in your household. Most people around us owned their three-bedroom houses with big gardens by today's standards, but then they did have higher interest rates and problematic inflation.
Big hair, big shoulder pads, big interest rates. 80s memories aren't always totally reliable, are they?
Well, no, I suppose not. I'll go away and chat to some people for some expert commentary on this for next week, so it may not be a definitive yes or no answer, but let us know what you think. I'd be keen to hear people's observations. Our email address is questions@rnz.co.nz.
So that's it for this week.
Thank you for joining us, and please keep sending your questions to questions@rnz.co.nz and like, share, rate, follow, all that good stuff, our podcast. We really appreciate it. Bye for now.
No Stupid Questions with Susan Edmunds was written and presented by Susan Edmunds. Justin Gregory is the producer. The engineer is Phil Benge. Thanks to Kinyash and A for the question, and Liz Coe, that's me, Robin Walker and Kelvin Davidson for their answers. Follow and listen to No Stupid Questions with Susan Edmunds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or any podcast app so you don't miss an episode.